Hello, everyone. Controlled Chaos speaking. I assume we are privy to what we're doing here. Otherwise, we're taking a look at structure decks, seeing if they're ready for the Genesys format. Excuse me. It's a little early for me, but I plan to record, edit, and upload this all on the same day. So let's not use up much more time. Let's get right to it. This is the Marik structure deck. An interesting addition to the list. Normally, character decks are reserved as a starter deck thing. But here, we have a lot of interesting features. For one thing, there's no clear indicator on who the ace monster is, though I'm willing to assume... Let me double check. Yeah. I'm willing to assume that would be either the lava golem, or there's possibly a gravekeeper's monster that could also serve as the ace. Let's see, possibly visionary. So we'll get right into it, starting with Lava Golem himself. This is a pretty famous card, one that I believe still has some use for the current format. Lava Golem is an oddball card, but one that, as I said, does have utility. To summon this monster, one, you have to tribute monsters on your opponent's side of the field, which requires 2 tributes. Which these days, if someone's got a big board, that's not too much of an issue. The second thing is, you'll be summoning Lava Golem to your opponent's side of the field. And that wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that it is essentially a fiend type fire attribute Blue Eyes White Dragon. But it being a beat stick, it doesn't necessarily make it too difficult to get rid of. But it also has a third utility to it. During the opponent's standby phase, they'll constantly be taking 1,000 points of damage, as long as they have Lava Golem on the field. Now, if this were Master Duel, it wouldn't be too much of an issue. Just link it off, or just use link monsters. But in Genesys format, I'm sure it's got a bit more staying power here. But it's still a 3,000 attack monster, so I get the feeling that Lava Golem probably has some points assigned to it. Nope. Lava Golem, no points assigned to it. Then again, I don't think any of the kaijus have gotten points added to them either. And they essentially have descended from the Lava Golem. Let's see. Was visionary. Okay. So here's the second potential ace of the deck. Gravekeeper's Visionary. This card can be tributed by tributing 1 Gravekeeper's monster. Gains 200 attack for each Gravekeeper in the graveyard. And if it would be destroyed, you can discard a Gravekeeper instead. Very basic stuff, but it makes it very difficult to get rid of. Let's see. Yep, not once per turn. So if this deck was focused on Gravekeepers, and you have a lot of draw power, Gravekeeper's Visionary has a lot of staying power, and each time it would just get stronger. So it can be forgiven its low stats because it gets bigger over time, the longer it stays on the field. Alright. Let's go over some of the other monsters that we've gone over before. I believe that would be Mystic Tomato. Maybe I think I went over Dark Geroid. So yes, Mystic Tomato, just your basic floater. It can be very effective in this deck, especially with Gravekeeper's Spy, which we'll go into a little later. Let me see. Dark Geroid, when summoned, one monster in the field loses attack. Has potential, but let's see. Yeah, it does have potential, but it targets, so some really powerful threats could overshadow this one. And I think we'll round out the rest of them. Let's see, yeah, we'll round out the first quarter with the remainder of the monsters that don't fit into any specific archetype. Let's see, starting with the only normal monster of the deck, Gilgarth, whose stats I would say have been power crept. 1800 used to be the golden standard for level 4 monsters, but now that's become 2000 or even 2100. Visor Des. Let's see. If normal summoned, target a monster your opponent controls during your third standby phase. After this effect's activation, destroy that monster. This card cannot be destroyed by battle while the targeted monster is on the field. It is an interesting one. The problem being that the player can simply get rid of the monster. Furthermore, this effect also targets, but it also has staying power. But unfortunately, you would have to normal summon it, and its attack is 500, so that would definitely leave you open until the next turn when you can finally switch it to defense. If you can, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this deck does have ways of going around that. So I'd say Visor Des is a middling card. Okay. This one also, I think, has potential to be an ace, but I don't know if it's got really that much going for it. It's a level 6 monster with low stats that gains 700 attack during each of your standby phases. So you have to wait one turn for it to actually reach a moderate level, and it'll just go up from there. Which has become a Herculean task nowadays, because all an opponent would have to do is use Lightning Vortex or cards like that to get rid of him. And then there goes your tribute. New Doria. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, target a monster on the field and destroy it. This... Let's see. Yeah, this has great potential comparable to cards like Maneater Bug, Lightsworn Beast, those. Let's see. You can see Newdoria being used as a tripwire, but again, it has to be destroyed by battle. so it also has the same faults as Man-Eater Bug or Old Vindictive Magician. And now that I think on it a bit, it doesn't even have a way for you to trigger the effect before battle. So yeah, Eudoria is in the same line as Man-Eater Bug, but it's the bottom of the barrel. Now we have Drillago. If the only cards your opponent controls are face-up monsters with 1600 or more attack, this card can attack your opponent directly. So if anything is stronger than Drillago, you can attack directly with him, which can be very useful as a finishing move. Your opponent has a big board, but they're low in life points. Summon this guy, and as long as they don't have anything to stop the attack, otherwise, that's it. So yeah, a potential sneak move that is worthy of Marik's time. So for the first quarter, the final monster we'll look over is Boganian. During each of your standby phases, inflict 600 damage to your opponent. Summon Boganian, then you have to wait until your next turn to get any value from him. Though I feel this deck might have ways of stopping attacks, but it's best not to take the risk with Boganian because it's a weak monster, plus all the opponent has to do, again, is use Lightning Vortex. First quarter review. We see we're starting to see what this deck is kind of about. It's a lot of dark monsters. We've just finished looking over the random side of things, and it's subpar at best. But I sincerely believe that the Gravekeepers will make up for it. And Lava Golem, really leads the charge of it being a deck that deals damage to your opponent and allows you to finish them off quickly with a few choice cards. But yes, there are a lot of cards in this list so far that would see replacement. So, moving on with what is possibly the most famous Gravekeeper. That is Gravekeeper Spy. See, its flip effect allows you to special summon a Gravekeeper's monster with 1500 or less attack from the deck. Now, yes, it is a floater, but it's a floater with 2000 defense. But again, the opponent can just simply outright destroy it with an effect to nullify this altogether. But it makes for a good floater chain. And because it's a flip effect, that means you can activate it right off the bat. Gravekeeper's Curse. If this card is summoned, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. A potential finishing move, but less effective than Drillago. But not a bad card to have in the hand, I would think. Because this way, all you'd have to do is, if they're at 500 or less attack, which is a Herculean task, I know, but once you reach 500 life points, all you would have to do is just summon this guy and it's game over. So, yeah, potential game ender. Next, 2 copies of Gravekeeper's Guard. Let's see. Flip effect. Target a monster your opponent controls. Return that target to the hand. Very powerful. Outside of it targeting, it's a very powerful effect. Returning cards to the hand, especially extra deck monsters or level 5 or higher monsters, those would be major targets that you would want to return to the hand as opposed to outright destroy. The graveyard's a second hand and easily summoned, special summoned from the hand, not as easily done. Furthermore, returning extra deck monsters returns them to the extra deck, and they'd have to use up materials to bring them back again. So yeah, pretty powerful effect, though it does have quite a few caveats, like it has to have its flip effect activated, and it could just be outright destroyed before that. But I can see potential. Gravekeeper Spear Holder. If I remember correctly, this monster, does it give piercing or does it have piercing? Okay, it has piercing battle damage, and its stats are middling. Um, so piercing battle damage doesn't necessarily come up as often as one would expect. This would probably be a good. Well, no, it's not even a good side deck monster. Because to make this guy viable, you have to boost its attack, and there aren't that many strategies that even utilize a defensive position. So, yeah, there are better options than Gravekeeper's Spearholder. Gravekeeper's Chief. Level 5, 1900. You can only control one Gravekeeper's Chief. Your graveyard is unaffected by Necro Valley. When this card is tribute summoned, you can target a Gravekeeper's monster in the graveyard to special summon that target. Let's see. We'll get into Necro Valley a bit later, but just know that Necro Valley keeps effects from affecting the graveyard, and Gravekeeper's Chief circumvents that and also makes use of that fact. So, tribute summoning Gravekeeper's Chief using Gravekeeper's monster, you can summon the material back, and there you have two monsters. You might have a potential Xyz summon if you use a level 5 monster for the tribute. With his effect, you can just bring it back. So, yeah, this is a decent card to have in the deck, I would think. Gravekeeper's Cannon Holder. Let's see. You can tribute a Gravekeeper's monster except for Cannon Holder and inflict 700 damage to your opponent. A mechanic soldier, if you will. And this also has something of a similar vein, but it has the caveat that you have to have a monster on the field already. Which this deck, it's... If you use Cannon Holder as tribute for Commander, you would. So, it's also got potential, I think, as a finishing card. We've got a few more beyond the first half, so we'll go over them in sequence and then go into the halftime review. Gravekeeper's Assailant. When this card declares an attack while Necro Valley is on the field, you can target a monster your opponent controls and change that target's battle position. So, I want to say this could chain into Spear Holder, but Gravekeeper's Assailant could mess with the opponent's strategy, as if they're planning on having monsters in attack position most of the time, they're likely going to have weak or middling defense, and this Assailant, by that virtue, could give you an opening. Like, I think I would get rid of Spear Holder before I get rid of Assailant, is what I'm trying to say. Then we have Gravekeeper's Commandant. Simply put, you discard this card to add a Necro Valley from the deck to the hand. I believe this monster came from a time where a lot of the monsters a good amount of monsters at least had effects that search the deck for their specific field spell. There was an elemental hero monster. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but they were there. So I wonder if this. Well, no, it doesn't. So this would actually make a good, an excellent, actually, replacement for terraforming, because Necro Valley is a very powerful field spell that you would want to try to get to your hand as quickly as possible in this deck, because it augments the Gravekeepers and also has utility outside of its archetype. Anyways, then we have Gravekeeper's Descendant. You contribute one other face-up Gravekeeper's monster to target a card in your opponent controls and destroy that target. Destroys a card your opponent controls. Though you have to tribute another Gravekeeper's monster, which you could... Let's see. There might be some merit to this. Like, I believe the deck has quite a few options of getting monsters to the field quickly. So we'll put a pin in this for now. Let's see, Descendant. Alright. And with that, we're finally at the halfway review. So far, among the lineup, there are probably 5 cards I would get rid of, including only one of them being a Gravekeeper's monster. The Spear Soldier, because it doesn't really come up that as often as one would hope for. Boganian, because it takes too long to set up. Legendary Fiend, for the same reason. Visor Death, same reason. Gilgarth is on the very bottom of the list because there's not much value outside of it being a level 4 normal monster. Anyways. Now we move on to the spell cards. We'll start with the big hitter and then go over the cards that I've already gone over before. So, the big hitter of the deck, and we've got 2 copies of it, is Necro Valley. We're finally here, so let's explain how it works. First of all, it's a Gravekeeper support card, which increases Gravekeeper's monsters' attack and defense by 500, which is a very big boost for them. In case you hadn't noticed their stats, this will bring them up to par. But the biggest item of this card is that, let's see, let's just read it out and you can probably tell where it's going. Cards in the graveyard cannot be banished. Negate any card effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place. Negate any card effect that changes types or attributes in the graveyard. So, essentially, once a monster goes into the graveyard, nothing can be done to change it or to remove it. It is there for the foreseeable future as long as Necro Valley is on the field. And this would definitely mess any strategy up because, like, there are card effects that change themselves, but this puts a kibosh to that. And this also prevents special summoning, which is another big ticket. So yes. And I can imagine Necro Valley having some points assigned to it. Let's have a look. Ah, there it is. 40 points per card. So with that, we've already reached 80. But hopefully the rest of the deck won't overdo it. Because the fact of Necro Valley is pretty powerful itself, this deck would actually be ready for the Genesys format. I'm already seeing a few. I'm already seeing a few cards that might prove to be troublesome. So, cards we've already gone over. Mystical Space Typhoon, spell removal. Nightmare Steel Cage. Both players cannot attack for 2 turns. Creature swap. Switch monsters that you control. Book of Moon. Flip a monster face down to disrupt your opponent's plays. And then Foolish... Did we go over Foolish Burial? Yeah. Foolish Burial, just send a monster from the deck to the graveyard, which also has good strategies. Okay, so Foolish Burial might put us over the edge. We'll see. Foolish Burial. Oops. Yep. Necro Valley was enough, but we went overboard with the others. So yeah, lesson learned. When you have a powerful field spell like Necro Valley, you gotta middle out with the rest of them. I would recommend just getting rid of Foolish Burial, probably focusing on the Book of Moon, maybe a creature swap or 2, I don't know. Maybe. Yes, I see where creature swap comes in because you summon Lava Golem, then you switch it out. Then attack them to finish them off. But yes, this deck as it is isn't usable in Genesys format. Let's see here. And it's probably going to get worse from here. Let's see. So, there aren't that many spells left, so let's just go over them. Let's see. And I'm making sure that I am going over them. Haven't gone over that one. And that one. I'm pretty sure that all 3 of these, or at least 2 of these that we're about to go into, will have point values added to them. Dark Room of Nightmare. Each time your opponent takes damage from a card effect, except for Dark Room of Nightmare, inflict 300 damage to your opponent. This one modifies damage, but it's more of a win more card. You can play it, but it uses up space in the deck that could be used for cards that enable the strategy much better. But I say you can play it because Dark Room of Nightmare has been on the limited list and ban list because of combos that utilize it. But let's see. No points. Okay. Next, Magical Stone Excavation. By discarding 2 cards, return a spell in the graveyard to your hand. Good spell recycling, but it uses up too much hand advantage for it to be very viable. But if there is a very powerful spell that you can only have 1 of in the deck, I could see Magical Stone Excavation actually having some merit in the Genesys format. Allure of Darkness. This card has seen its time in many a deck using the Dark attribute. Draw 2 cards, then banish a dark monster from the hand. Or, if you do not have any in your hand, send your entire hand to the graveyard. So yes, that's just simple as that, but it's a draw 2, -1 factor. Very good for sifting through the deck. And it might have points added to it. Yep, 5 points. All right. Penultimate quarter review. we're now seeing how the deck is augmented, and we can see it being a very powerful Gravekeeper's deck. Unfortunately, we also see that it has quite a few powerful cards that might need to be trimmed before its Genesys ready. In fact, out of curiosity, yeah, all we got to do is get rid of Foolish Burial and put in something else, and you're good to go. But let's see what the trap cards hold for us. And let's start with the ones that we've already gone over. Let's see. Oh. And it's got one more surprise for us. We'll go into that after the traps. Malevolent Catastrophe. Sort of a mirror force, but for spells and traps. And then, of course, Mirror Force. Everyone knows what Mirror Force does. Activate it when your opponent attacks. Destroy all of your monsters. Your opponent's monsters that are in attack position. Those are the only two that we're familiar with, I believe. Acid Trap Hole. This one, target a face-down defense position monster in the field, flip it face up, then destroy it if its defense is 2,000 or less, or return it face down if it's more than 2,000. This, now that I read it, this could have a utility for your own flip effect monsters. Let's see. Let's see. Target face down. I think it does trigger flip effects. But outside of that, it wouldn't have that much more utility because flip effects can be easily dealt with otherwise. But so yeah, Acid Trap Hole would more likely be to activate your own flip effects. I think I'll review these two in tandem because they essentially do the same thing. Skull Invitation. Each time any amount of cards is sent to the graveyard, inflict 300 damage to its owner for each card sent. And Coffin Seller. Each time monsters are sent to your opponent's graveyard, inflict 300 damage to your opponent. The only difference being is Coffin Seller only triggers when monsters are sent and only triggers for each instance that a monster is sent and not each card. Skull Invitation, if any cards are sent to the graveyard, each card deals damage. But both can augment the other, especially if monsters are being sent, which, in this day and age, is a foregone conclusion. In fact, it's nice to see that monsters total out higher than spells and traps. That's a good ratio. Nightmare Wheel. This card is in the same vein as Spellbinding Circle or Shadow Spell, but this has a Marik spin to it, being a torturous trap. Let's see, activate this card by targeting a monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack or change its battle position. When it leaves the field, destroy this card. So far, similar. However, once per turn during your standby phase, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. However, that monster must be on the field to activate and resolve this effect. So, as long as Nightmare Wheel is on the field, that monster cannot attack or change battle position, but this is easily remedied by either tributing it off or using it as extra material. Though I can see this actually having some merit as it's not as easy in Genesys format because there are no link monsters. So Nightmare Wheel has some merit to it. And here's a pretty famous one. In fact, any historian can see how this became the now fusion monster, Egyptian God Slime. And I wonder if... Let me double check something real quick. Can it be summoned off of this? Special summon from the extra deck by tributing a level 10 Aqua monster with 0 attack. Which this guy is. So yeah, this can summon into Egyptian God Slime. Pretty cool. Metal Reflect Slime. Special summon this card in defense position as an effect monster with... That is an Aqua, Water, level 10 with 0 attack and 3,000 defense. If summoned this way, this card cannot attack. It cannot attack. It can still be destroyed. But a lot of ace monsters are just shy of 3,000. So this could probably do the job, but it can still be destroyed, especially by spell removal, because it is still considered a trap. But it does still have a lot of potential for it, especially with the advent of Egyptian God Slime. But that's neither here nor there. We'll judge the deck by itself at the moment. Dark Illusion. When a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated that targets a dark monster on the field, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Not very good for protecting your monsters because it can only counter effects that target. And not many would want effects that target these days. There's still a good amount of them, but there are better options than Dark Illusion. And now we come to 2 surprise additions to this deck that I was not expecting. We have the Mystical Beast of Serket and the Temple of the Kings, which kind of go hand in hand, but we'll go in them in order. Temple of the Kings. You can activate 1 trap card the turn it was set. You can send a Mystical Beast of Serket in your monster zone and this card you control to the graveyard to special summon a monster from your hand or deck or a fusion monster from the extra deck. You can only use each effect of Temple of the Kings once per turn. Very powerful, and it goes hand in hand with the Mystical Beast of Serket. If you do not control Temple of the Kings, destroy this card. Banish any monster destroyed by Bell with this card. If this card destroys a monster by Bell, it gains 500 attack. And it has stats that actually rival Skull Fiend. I should know this. Why did I forget this? Summoned Skull. That's it. Summoned Skull being the strongest level 6 monster. Or strongest monster that only requires 1 tribute to tribute summon. Mystical Beast of Serket being very powerful at that. But I'm pretty sure that both of these guys have point values added to them. Let's see here. Serket. Okay. Mystical Beast of Serket has no points. What about Temple of the Kings? No points for Temple of the Kings. I think it's because they require each other to fully function. And Temple of the Kings' first effect, it can be mitigated. Which I wonder if you can activate 1 trap card the turn it was set. So that could be seen as only 1 time while this card is on the field. Kind of in a similar vein to the wind-ups. Not sure. Alright. Final review. First and foremost, this is the first deck through this series I've seen that has more than 40 cards. We'll probably see more of that in the later entries. Is this deck Genesys ready? Not yet. It just needs to trim just one card from it, and it's good to go. Yeah, like this is a pretty solid deck that I can see being used in a competitive format. Just drop Foolish Burial, and you're good to go. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, be sure to hit the subscribe button and make sure the bell's ringing. That will keep you up to date on my uploads. Also, be sure to check out my Sure page. I'll be putting polls and events there. And I live stream on Twitch every Saturday, and in the spring and fall, Mondays and Wednesdays. Anyways, thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be going over the Dragunity Legion structure deck. But until then, this is Controlled Chaos, signing out.